future. See, what you don't know is that Boris Johnson is another Cameron who has ridden the populist sentiment in Britain. Welcome to the show. Many of you are cheering and waving flags and saying this indicates that Britain's going to become Britain again and blah, blah, blah. And that you think Boris Johnson is another Churchill. Well, I have evidence that no one else in the entire world media has that Boris Johnson is another dyed-in-the-wool liberal who saw which way the wind was blowing and he rode the currents. But we'll get to Boris Johnson in a minute. My summary of the Brexit issue is this. Brexit and us is what it's about. I mean, how does it affect you? How do you, sitting there listening in this audience, you've heard everything you could possibly hear about this, and then some. And you're all experts on it. And you're positive it means that Britain's going to rise again as a nationality. Well, in a way, maybe, but maybe not. I do know this. It is Obama's Waterloo. 2 losses in 48 hours. Amnesty, dead. EU, dead. Obama and his globalist schemers are far from finished, believe me, but they are weakened. The people have spoken. They are willing to have a weaker economy if they can stop the flood of Muslims and Africans into their nation. English law is much tougher on terrorism than pansy EU law, which is why ISIS, strangely enough, came out and wanted Britain to remain attached to the Pinko New World Order maniacs in Brussels. That's something very important for you to remember. Even the terrorists wanted Britain to remain in the new Soviet Union, which is the European Union. Now, many of you don't know what to think. Initially, you're cheering and saying this is a populist movement. This is good for Trump. And in that sense, maybe you're right. But I don't want to go into that aspect of it right now because I think you need to see the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that all politicians are scoundrels. Every last one of them are scoundrels. There's not a good one on the entire landscape. Some are worse than others. Some just might care about their country, although you don't really know until they're in power what they're really going to do. And so if you care to comment from your point of view about this cataclysm that occurred in Britain, the phone number is 855-400-7282. It's Open Mic to Mike Friday. We have many things to cover and much sound to get through. But the fact of the matter is, I think that the only thing that's of any value to us is whether this indicates that Trump will triumph and Hillary will fall. Now, Hillary should fall based upon her corruption. Hillary should fall based upon her complete and abject failure as a Secretary of State. Hillary should fall based upon the missing appointments in her email calendar, which has been forgotten because of people like the quisling Wolf Blitzer, who won't even cover it. But you, the people, should understand that we have a choice in this country that's very clear between an unknown individual named Donald Trump. He's rather unknown as a politician, and a very, very, very well-known politician named Hillary Clinton. How you could ever vote for her is beyond me, unless you're a robot who think that because she doesn't wear a pair of pants, she's better for the country. But putting that aside, Brexit is the issue. You, the listeners, are very important. And what I want to play for you first will be Donald Trump on Brexit from Scotland in clip number 1.
I think I see a big parallel. I think people really see a big parallel. A lot of people are talking about that, and not only the United States but other countries. People want to take their country back. They want to have independence in a sense, and you see it with Europe, all over Europe. You're going to have more than just, in my opinion, more than just what happened last night. You're going to have, I think, many other cases where they want to take their borders back. They want to take their monetary back. They want to take a lot of things back. They want to be able to have a country again. So I think you're going to have this happen more and more. I really believe that, and I think it's happening in the United States.
Well, we all agree with him, and we think this is a good thing for Donald Trump's chances of becoming president. But let's go to Europe itself. Let's look at what happened. What is the EU? What was really voted upon? Now, this whole idea of a common market was started 40 years ago. It wasn't started 4 months ago or 4 years ago. 40 years ago, the common market emerged in Europe. And the common market was supposed to be just about free trade. No tariffs between the countries of Europe. That's how it was sold by the globalists and the manipulators in Brussels. It would not affect the sovereignty of any nation. There would be no impingement upon laws other than those dealing with trade. It would be good for everyone to be able to sell their goods across borders without tariffs. And then slowly but surely, as in the case with all government, it grew and it grew and it grew and it became a monster unto itself. A paralyzing monster that was running out of Brussels, impinging on every member of the European Union, dictating not simply trade terms, but the terms of their very existence, from what they could say in public, what they could do in public, all the way down to a simple fisherman in England who said he could not fish without getting permission from some college brat in Brussels. And so it went way beyond trade, and it became a paralyzing new Soviet Union. That's what the EU really is, and that's what this vote was really about. The common man knew that. The common man knew exactly what he was voting for. He was saying, you know what, I really don't care if it costs us money. I don't care if the guys in the Rolls Royces see their stocks tumble. I don't care about any of that. All I care about is I don't want a bunch of college brats in Brussels dictating to me how I should run my life. And moreover, it's about immigration. Let's not forget that this was a mandate, a referendum on immigration itself. It was a mandate on out-of-control immigration, especially the flooding of Syrians and Africans into Europe and into the UK. Many of these violent, criminal immigrants are rioting, they're burning, they're beating up police in an attempt to get to the United Kingdom. Now, why were they so anxious to get across the ocean from France? Why were they desperate, so desperate that they would get into violent fights with the French police to get into that tunnel and get into Britain? Because they were going to have a free ride in Britain. All of the refuse of Africa, all of the refuse of Syria wanted to ride into Britain and sit there on the behinds and do nothing but collect a welfare check. And the people who saw this most clearly were not those in the Rolls Royces and the Bentleys. The people who saw this most clearly were not Mr. Cameron, the fake conservative. No, the people who saw this most clearly were the ordinary British. And so, again, I want you to remember what just happened here. This was a huge loss for Obama. And this is coming on the heels of another loss 48 hours ago in his attempts to grant amnesty to at least 4 million illegal aliens in the United States of America, just in time for them to invade our voting booths. But he lost. Now he lost this one. What's intriguing to me, and it's something I'm going to touch on again later in this program, is how Obama's Waterloo, which is what just happened, and make no mistake about it, this man has suffered 2 of the biggest losses of his political life. He's run into 2 stone walls, one after the other. But you wouldn't know that because of the smoothness of his delivery and, of course, the quizzlings in the media. And where does our dear leader speak today? None other than at the factory of propaganda owned by Mark Zuckerberg. He gives a joint conference at a factory owned by our chief propagandist, Mark Zuckerberg. So why would Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook and Bill Gates of Microsoft and Mr. Schmidt of Google and Mr. Whatever of Apple, why do they want open borders? Why did they want Brexit to fail? Because they're terrified of the sovereignty of any single nation. And I'll go into all of these topics, including something a little bizarre for you, which is the discussion we had 2 days ago on the Savage Nation about the Antichrist. I know you're saying, oh, don't go there. No, I'm going to go there. And how Obama represents a demonic force in American politics, and how it was predicted on this very program 2 days ago by a religious man who said, when I asked him, how does it end for the Antichrist, he predicted this would happen. I'll be right back on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
My Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I trust to protect my wealth with gold and silver. Call 800-BUICOIN. Welcome back. Now, I've been an Anglophile my entire life, and one of my important botanical collections resides in Kew Gardens in London, which I've not been able to visit since 2009, when I was banned from entering Britain based on a propaganda campaign put forth by the communist, socialist, laborites in Britain. And during that Banned in Britain campaign, Boris Johnson gave a speech in which he said that Michael Savage poses no risk to British security, so why won't MPs say so? And he also said, in 2009, it is shocking that not a single MP has stood up to defend free speech, says Boris Johnson. Now, having said that, you would think that Boris Johnson is a friend of Michael Savage. That there's nothing further from the truth, because in the same 2009, he attacked me viciously. And then he went on to say that I should not be banned from Britain because that they're not a bunch of school children. There's certainly what's wrong with our country, he said. Why must we ban this guy? He says his statements, I hate his statements. Boris Johnson at the time was a journalist for the London Telegraph. And he said, the ban against Savage makes us look so infantile, so pathetic. What are we, some sort of kindergarten that needs to be protected against these dangerous American radio shows? I thought that was great. But then when I actually listened to Boris Johnson's read his entire article, I saw the liberal Boris Johnson, and he is a liberal. I want you to understand that. Many of you are cheering Johnson, and you're hoping that a new Churchill has arisen, a new nationalist. I think you're wrong. I think Boris Johnson is a very clever, like all of them, a very clever politician who saw which way the wind blew and knew that the only chance he had was to go with the Brexit. And he gambled and he won, and he probably will be the next prime minister. Now, from my point of view, I hope that someone could get to him and say, look, you said that Savage shouldn't have been banned, and that you'll lift the ban against him because he's only a talk show host who you may find repugnant, but he doesn't threaten the country. I doubt very much that when the time comes he'll do anything along those lines, because I heard the same rubbish when David Cameron was about to become prime minister. I was told by those in the know, those who ate in the clubs and knew someone who knew someone who knew someone, that Cameron was a true conservative, and that when he became prime minister, he'd get Michael Savage off the ban list. They're saying, well, why am I making it so personal? Well, for two reasons. One, because this is a huge issue in my life, that I should be banned from entering a nation. It's unbelievable to me that I would be put in the same category as outright murderers, and at the same time they keep Muslims in there who threaten to overthrow the government, who threaten to kill the Queen, who threaten every which way to Sunday, and they don't throw them out. So, yeah, it's a big issue to me. And I happen to love England. I love London. I like the architecture. And I think the people are, by and large, a great people. But Boris Johnson is a liberal, make no mistake about it. I have in my hand a speech, his article from May of 2009 about this subject. Listen to what he said about Obama. He said, on the contrary, the Americans have just had the good sense to elect a supremely gifted and eloquent black man when the prospect of a black prime minister still seems some way off. And he says, what are we, some sort of kindergarten that needs to be protected against these dangerous American radio shows? Does Jackie Smith think we are all dimwits who can't tell when a man like Savage is talking rubbish? Why can America take it and we can't? The answer is that America still has a constitutional protection of free speech. And I have been amazed over the last few days to see how few people in this country are willing to stick up for that elementary principle. Across Fleet Street, swords have stuck in their scabbards, swords that normally leap to the defense of liberty. And he went on to say that I should not have been banned from the country. Not at all. But he also was very proud that Barack Obama had been elected. He called him a supremely gifted and eloquent black man. I'm sure he still thinks the same of Barack Obama. And as I sit here, I'm trying to lower your expectations about what is going to happen in Britain, because I don't think it's going to be what you think is going to happen. You're going to see a little more flag waving. You're going to see a little more patriotism. But my prediction is you're not going to see much of a change at all. Because at the end of the day, there's a golden rule that I tried to tell one of my employees who doesn't get it. There's a golden rule I learned when I didn't want to hear it. And that golden rule was told to me as such. He who pays the gold makes the rules. You don't make the rules. You work for the person who pays the gold. And that's the same with any nation. It's called the golden rule. Those who control the gold make the rules. So make no mistake about it. This is a cataclysmic expression of a populist sentiment. Yes, there will be some changes, but not the changes that you might expect. And that's really what I want to say on this subject. It's very personal to me. It was another blow to Obama. I believe it's Obama's Waterloo, because we have the soundbite of Obama going over there. We have that to play. Robert, play it of Obama when he went there and lobbied against leaving the European Union. He had the nerve to meddle in the affairs of Britain because of his egomaniacal craziness. Listen to this.
I think it's fair to say that maybe some point down the line there might be a UK-U.S. trade agreement, but it's not going to happen anytime soon because our focus is in negotiating with a big bloc, the European Union, to get a trade agreement done. Mm-hmm. And UK is going to be in the back of the queue.
Okay, so he goes over there and threatens Britain, and it's so backfired on this megalomaniac that some bright people in the media are saying that Obama's attempts to threaten Britain is the reason that it won by only 1 million some odd votes, because they hated that. They hated him as much as we do.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE. Savage.
I used to look up to Britain. I used to think it was one of the greatest countries on earth. It gave us the Magna Carta. There was such dignity in the British people themselves. And then along came these spineless pinkos, these boll weevils who destroyed the country from within. It was Gordon Brown. It was all of them. And then they told us David Cameron would be different, and he was just another face of the same evil. And many of you are listening, and you're saying, well, what does it have to do with me? I'm on a fixed income. Is it going to affect my Social Security? Well, many of you have a little money in the stock market, and you saw it went down today. Many of you put money in gold because you've been listening to my show, and it went up today. Well, I have Craig Smith on the show, not just because he's been an advertiser on the Savage Nation for 15 straight years, but because Craig Smith knows an awful lot about finances, and I think he's the best guest I could possibly find. Craig Smith of Swiss America. Thanks for your loyal support all these years, Craig. What does the Brexit vote mean for the American people?
Well, I think you sized it up very well in your intro, Michael, and that is that for 40 years the European Union has been really a failed project. And we took off on that same failed project in 1994 under NAFTA. We've seen wages completely suppressed or depressed in the middle class and the lower class workers, and that's happened here in America. That's why Donald Trump is right. This has a profound impact on his message to America. And so initially, Michael, I think the disruptions are going to...
Well, the Dow is down 600 points. Right now, the Dow is down 600 points. And you know this is not only an emotional reaction, but it's also a reaction that's being manipulated, wouldn't you say?
Bet. And, Michael, as I put out in my piece last night, the Wall Street bettors yesterday bet on profits versus betting on what was best for the British people. And right now, the Queen of England should be dispatching a royal jet to Michael Savage and picking you up with an apology, because the vote in London, or the vote in England yesterday, was about borders, language, and culture. And so while those pompous politicians may not have been listening, Michael, you can bet your life the British people who love and adore you and your message were listening, because they are willing to take some short-term pain financially in order to gain their freedom back, to gain their culture back, and to gain their borders back. They are tired.
That's what I'm saying. They know there's going to be a financial price to pay initially. But, Craig, looking forward, the Dow is down 600. Gold is up what now? How much is it up today?
$62 at the moment.
Yippee. Okay, so it went up now. That's a good thing for those who are the gold owners. But what's the prediction for gold and stocks, in your opinion, 6 months from now?
Well, first off, I think today is a bit of an overreaction because we have to remember, Michael, the Dow was up 230 points yesterday, and it's down 600 points today. So we're no different than we were back in May. I think the bigger picture is what is going to happen to banks are getting crushed overseas right now, Michael. The big area that is being hurt the worst are the financials. And again, this is because the people have said we've been tired of being controlled by central bank manipulation, by, as you put it, teenagers in Brussels telling us where we can fish or how we can open up our business.
Right.
And so, I mean, it's insane. When you said that, Michael, I remember things like that they're that foolish there. And here's a big thing that hurt the finances of London that I think or England that I think are really going to have an impact on America, Michael. People forget that Brussels opened up the borders to London, and you had unfettered immigration that came into a system, as you said, that would pay them to sit around on their butts. We have Hillary Clinton that wants to bring those same type of refugees into America to go on welfare that's at an all-time high in America, more people on food stamps, more people on disability. So to answer your question, this is going to have a negative impact on our economy. We're already growing at only 2%. Our 10-year treasuries are paying a mere 1.5%. You can't get any money. See, poor seniors are getting killed, Michael. They can't make any returns unless they go into the stock market and take risk. And so I think this is going to have a profound impact. And as I said in my piece today, Michael, I think this could make Donald Trump our next president of the United States. Because did you notice President Obama and Miss Hillary Clinton's response to this? We respect the decision of the British people. How about?
Well, look, the fact of the matter is, nothing in the media is saying that the Brexit leave victory was a huge and humiliating loss for Obama.
Absolutely,
and people have to understand the reason the press is covering up the connection to Obama and the loss is because they don't want it to reflect upon Hillary. I think that's the important point.
You're absolutely correct. And let me tell you, this has a huge impact on Mr. Obama because he lobbied this. He was directly involved with working with David Cameron in making sure that. Why do you think the bookies and the odds makers in Wall Street, Michael, had this thing less than a 17% chance that they would leave the EU? Because these guys thought they had it in the bag by scaring the British people, saying, if this happens, we'll be destroyed. There'll be blood in the streets. Our banks will be destroyed. Guess what? London is functioning properly today. Scotland is functioning properly today. And, yes, there's money being lost. And here's what I really respect about the British people, Michael. They're going to take some short-term pain, and we're probably going to in America, too, because until we get rid of...
Well, hold on. That's an important point, and I think we have to talk about it. If Donald Trump wins, and it looks increasingly likely that he will win by a huge margin, not only because of his message of borders, language, and culture, not only because he pushes a sort of soft nationalism, but because of Hillary's scandals, which are growing by the second. She is on the decline. He's on the rise. The tides of history are moving towards Trump. But you and I both know that when Trump becomes president, the people who control the economy are going to do to this economy exactly what they're doing right now. They're going to crash it. And by the way, let's talk about old George Soros, the master puppeteer, the man who seems to run the whole world. Do you know that I read this morning that he made another fortune?
Oh, yeah,
even though he was against this particular move politically? Do you know that he made a fortune on this particular move? Did you read that, Craig?
I did, Michael. And, you know, he's the man who broke the pound in the first place 30 years ago. I mean, you know, this guy is a bottom feeder. And, you know, we could spend an hour discussing what he did when he was a teenager during the Second World War. But I think you bring up a very, very important point, Michael. If Mr. Trump wins, he is going to have to be willing to do what Ronald Reagan did. We always hear Ronald Reagan's words, you know, name being thrown around. What did Ronald Reagan do in 1981? He allowed interest rates to go to 21%. Okay, he put us into a huge recession in the first 2 years of his administration, cleaned out all the excesses in the markets, got interest rates.
Wait, I want to stop for a minute. You just said something very intriguing. Reagan allowed the interest rates to go up?
You bet. We were running 15% inflation under the Carter administration. Interest rates are going up. Paul Volcker was authorized by...
We have no interest rate rises being raised here under Obama. Yellen's holding it to near zero, which, of course, is a fraudulent move unto itself. don't you think she should raise interest rates right now?
Absolutely. Absolutely, and that goes against the conventional wisdom because central banks have been manipulated these markets, Michael, for 7 years. Mr. Obama is convincing American people that the Dow Jones Industrial Average is the economy. That's not true, Michael.
That's a great point. That's a great point. It's only one metric, and it's an awfully shaky metric at that.
Now compare the Dow. Going up every year under Obama, compared to an economy that's grown at less than 2%, Michael. How can we have seen the Dow go up, 7-8% a year with an economy only growing at 2%? It's called...
Well, we're talking, Craig Smith, Swiss America, my number one advertiser for 15 years. We're talking about economics. Economics. But do you know what this vote was really about? It was about immigration. It was about the Muslims coming in and threatening the British. It was about cutting the throats of a British soldier in the streets by an African. It was about immigrants living better than the natives in the United Kingdom. It was about the overtaking of the nation by the refugees, Craig, and it's the same thing here. It's a very emotional thing that happened yesterday, and I predict it's that emotion that will lift Trump up to the presidency. Craig Smith, I want to ask you to just summarize in about a minute or less. Do you want to make a prediction or not about gold, about the stock market, or is that too risky?
Yeah, Michael, I never make predictions because if I could do that, I wouldn't have to work for a living.
I like that. I like that very much. All I know is I bought some more gold today. You'll be seeing the order coming through because it's a fundamental that will never go away. I think it should be part of everyone's portfolio. I mean, a small amount of gold is a very smart idea right now. Craig Smith of Swiss America, thank you for being with us on the Savage Nation, and thanks for sponsoring this great radio show for 15 straight years. Bye, Craig. Thank you very much. Okay, folks, I think when I come back, I owe it to you to take some of your calls on this historic day. This is also a backlash to Obama's attempt to influence the Brexit vote. He went over there again, and he threatened them that there would be no new trade deal, and he did it in that kind of supercilious, slimy way he has, which I have to play again, Robert. Play it where he gets cued again. Now, this was Obama going over to Britain to try and sway the people not to do what they just did yesterday. And I believe, by what I read, that Obama's appearance backfired on him. Listen carefully again.
I think it's fair to say that maybe some point down the line there might be a UK-U.S. trade agreement, but it's not going to happen anytime soon because our focus is in negotiating with a big bloc, the European Union, to get a trade agreement done. And UK is going to be in the back of the queue.
Okay,
not
stop
because
right there.
We don't have
the back of the queue. So he was given a speech to read by his speechwriters who work closely with the Cameron manipulators. As you well know, back of the queue is a British phrase. It's not an American phrase. And yet he said back of the queue. What do you think he was trying to do? Scare the Brits into submission once again. Now, I want to make another point here. This is the thing about racism. Many wealthy British liberals are obsessed with the issue of racism for reasons I can never understand. Many of them are guilty liberals, I know that. Many of them are still apologetic about the greatness of the British Empire. And many of them are justifying the flood of immigrants, especially from Africa and other former colonies, as just retribution for the years of conquest. Do you know that? And what's odd about it is that those on the top seem to have the most guilt, while those on the bottom have no guilt whatsoever. Think about that. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
My Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com. It's the only company I trust to protect my wealth. Call 800-BUY-COIN. So what does it mean? Well, it's clear the British, the average person, wanted change. Not the false coin of change that Obama sold the world, but real change. The change that means individual freedom, personal responsibility, individualism as opposed to a member of the new Soviet Union called the EU. But most importantly, this vote in Britain meant they will not be flooded with Africans and Syrians. Look, be very clear about it. You can couch it in any words you want. You can call them migrants, but that's a euphemism. These are not ordinary migrants who are coming there to become the next Einstein or the next Enrico Fermi. No, these are not the migrants who made the West better. These are the migrants who are making the West worse. And the people themselves were bearing the brunt of the crime wave, the rape wave. They were bearing the brunt of the welfare wave. And they're the ones who voted for this. Make no mistake about it. The same themes are playing here in the United States of America. Let me take a couple of quick calls on this historic day. Let's go to AAV Radio in North Carolina. Holly, quickly, please, what's your main point?
Thank you for sharing some time with me. I reckon the UK has overturned its own apple cart and that the timing of this is going to work out well for Hillary Clinton. I think the UK is going to be in the dumper for the next 5 to 6 months. And in October, they're going to have chaos trying to pick a new prime minister, and it won't be Boris Johnson. And I think all of the timing of that not going so well is going to work out well for the timing of the election for Hillary Clinton.
So what part of her campaign do you work on? Are you a local apparatchik or a national one?
I am merely a person who lives in Wilmington, North Carolina.
No, you're not. You're a robocaller for the Hillary campaign. You're probably paid by George Soros directly or indirectly. I'm sorry, certainly indirectly, because your call is clearly a straight-out political call by the Hillary campaign. You know that.
Well, it's a political call, but it's because I support Hillary, not because I work for her campaign.
Well, what is there to support in Hillary?
Over Donald Trump, for me, a lot.
No. Forget Donald Trump. What is it about her that you like so much? What she did in Libya? Is that something you're proud of?
It's going to be a choice between the two of them. And
I asked you, what is it that she has done that you are proud of?
I am proud of all the work she's ever done for women and children.
Okay, that's nonsense. What has she done as Secretary of State that you are proud of?
She did a lot of things for women and women's rights.
I asked you what she has done as Secretary of State that you are proud of.
The things she did that I think elaborated the fact that women need to be educated.
See, here we go again. You're reading talking points from the Hillary campaign. Ma'am, you've been exposed. Your dirty outfit has been aired for the world to see. How many shows do you think you can call today and be exposed like this? I have just shown you to be unable to answer a simple question. What has Hillary Clinton done as Secretary of State that you're proud of? The answer is nothing. And you go back to the same pathetic, worn-out talking points of women and children. And that, my friend, is not going to sell her, and that is not going to bring her into the White House. Have a nice day. This is the Savage Nation. This is what you have to put up with. You're going to hear this day and night. But if you get specific, and all you got to do is say to them, I'm showing you how to deal with this. Ask them a simple question. What has Hillary Clinton done as Secretary of State that you're proud of? Watch them smile, agree, and turn the argument to women and children, because she has been an abject disaster. Ask them if they are proud of the fact that she has run a secret State Department where many, many appointments have been redacted. They've disappeared from her server. Who did she meet with? Which foreign powers? Who paid her off? Who bribed her? Savage Nation, be here.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE. Savage. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation. Talk radio for the thinking person, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, Michael Savage.
Brexit. Many of you don't know Brexit from brisket, but now you do. You know a little bit about it. It means the people rose up, and by a slim margin, they have voted to detach themselves from the college boys and girls in Brussels who are running their everyday life. Down to the fisherman off the coast of England who said he could not fish without an official letter from some dumb college boy in Brussels. They felt that they were voting for freedom. It is also Obama's Waterloo. 2 losses in 48 hours. You won't read that in the newspaper. You won't see that on the news. These are 2 great big defeats for Barack Hussein Obama. Amnesty was killed the other day. Now the EU plan of a new world global order that he would be running along with his globalist schemers, seems to be dead in the waters. Now, they're far from finished, believe me, but they are weakened. The people have spoken, and the people are willing to have a weaker economy in order to stop the flood of Africans and Muslims into their nation. Yeah, I don't mince words. Don't call them migrants. Say it like it is. This is not Albert Einstein fleeing the Nazis. This is not Enrico Fermi fleeing the Nazis. They're not exactly the same. English law is much tougher on terrorism than pansy EU law, which is why ISIS wanted Britain to remain attached to the Pinko New World Orderists in Brussels. And these are the most salient points. The phone number is 855-400-7282. Many of you are asking, what does it have to do with me? And we have played a piece from the man who you think benefits the most from it, and that is Donald Trump. And I think it's a very good soundbite, but I'm not going to play the same one again. I'd like to play 2 and 3 on the Savage Nation.
I think David Cameron's a good man. He was wrong on this. He didn't get the mood of his country right. He was surprised. I think he was very surprised to see what happened. But he's a good man, and he felt that way, and probably did the right thing. I was actually very surprised that President Obama would have come over here, and he would have been so bold as to tell the people over here what to do. And I think that a lot of people don't like him, and a lot of people voted. If he had not said it, I think your result might have been different. But when he said it, people were not happy about it, and I thought it was totally inappropriate. And when I said what I said, I told people, I said, don't do what I'm saying necessarily. Do whatever you think, but this was just my opinion. He came in and really tried to convince people to stay. And I thought it was inappropriate. And then she doubled down and she did the same thing. And obviously, for the 219th time, they were wrong. They're always wrong. And that's the problem with them.
And he's talking again about your president, the president of the United States of America, who's so megalomaniac, such a big megalomaniac, that he went to Britain and he had the nerve to go over there and threaten them not too long ago. It's a very important speech that should not be forgotten, where he said that if you leave the European Union, we're going to move you to the back of the queue. And he did it in that way of his that has disgusted most of us for so many years. That arrogant, bouncy, schoolyard bully way of his. Just slapping people in the face because he's so well protected by the media. Listen to clip 4 all over again to see why this outcome became this outcome. 04.
I think it's fair to say that maybe some point down the line there might be a UK-U.S. trade agreement, but it's not going to happen anytime soon because our focus is in negotiating with a big bloc, the European Union, to get a trade agreement done. And UK is going to be in the back of the queue. Not because we don't have a special relationship.
Threatening them didn't work. They don't like him. They see right through him. So that was number one. Then he went and he talked about the New World Order. If you want to really get sick, we could play that one. But the man is clearly a globalist who saw himself as the future president of the world. So that detracted him from that plan. David Cameron, who was not a conservative at all, I was told when I was banned in Britain that when he became prime minister, he would take me off the list. It's very personal to me that he turned out to be another phony because I spent $400,000, and many of you contributed money to the Savage Legal Defense Fund. It was money well spent because I learned that the law has no meaning whatsoever when it comes to corrupt governments. You know, there's an old saying, don't fight City Hall. Go try to fight a nation. No man can fight a nation and win. It's almost impossible. But today the people fought their nation and they won. And I'm hopeful that when there's a new administration in England, they will revisit that list of people not allowed to enter the nation. And I am lifted from that list because I will bring several thousand of you over to Britain for a victory march, a victory parade. And we'll spend a lot of money. We'll spend an awful lot of money when we go to England and celebrate freedom and the Magna Carta, and that we show them that I'm not so dangerous after all. I'm just a man with an opinion of borders, language, and culture. But Boris Johnson is not the man you think he is. He's a very liberal politician who just happened to see which way the wind was blowing, and he knew that the wind was blowing towards a soft nationalism, and he rode that wind. And he likely will be the next prime minister. Cameron resigned, but not immediately. This is another clever little thing. Cameron announced his resignation after the United Kingdom voted to leave the EU. But did he step down? No. He said he's going to leave in the fall. So what does that really mean? It means he's going to manipulate behind the scenes to not leave after all. Because if he really wanted to leave, he would have called for a vote in Parliament at the next session of Parliament and see if there was an up-down vote of no confidence. That's how it works in Britain, which I always loved about that system. They could have had a vote on this next Monday, and we would have seen if he really wants to leave. I doubt it. I think he's another clever little manipulator like all of them. So I've given you some rough ideas of what I think about this. I'd like to hear what you have to say about this. Let's go to WABC in New York City. Chris, what do you think Brexit means to you?
Michael, I think there is an issue which I don't think many will report. I'm an associate of Michael Shrimpton, who was a barrister who was essentially one of the major coordinators of Brexit. And Shrimpton, at one point in his career, had been aide to Vernon Walters. I also am an acquaintance of Christopher Monckton.
Okay, but sir, what is your main point, sir? I don't need to know I accept you know what you're talking about. What's your point?
We've averted an immediate confrontation with the Russians, and within the next 2 years, Germany may unravel.
Well, right. Germany needs to leave the EU, and they need to throw Merkel in prison for what she's done to them, along with the refugees she's brought in. They ought to deport her to Syria. But yes, the EU was angling for a war with Russia. I think that's what you're saying. Isn't that true?
Yes. But more importantly, it was Bavarian and Prussian intelligence, not Obama. I call him Von Obama.
All right. The bottom line is that NATO, which is manipulated by Obama, wanted a confrontation with Russia in the worst possible way. Obviously, to build up their supplies of material, to rob as much money as they could on the supplies and ammunition and whatnot, and then, of course, not really go to war with Russia, just to steal as much money as they could on a fake war with Russia. So they really didn't want a confrontation with Russia because they would have had their heads handed to them. What they wanted was the trillions of dollars in American money so they could steal as much as they could on the grift. You know that, and I know that. During wars, there's great profits. And that's why the vermin in NATO wanted a war with Russia. It makes no sense whatsoever. So your bottom line is that you think that this derailed that track, Chris. I'm sending you Government Zero because rather than quoting from my own book, there's an awful lot about this whole EU thing in Government Zero. Stay on the line. We'll send it out to you free of charge immediately on the Savage Nation. WABC again, New York City. John, what's your opinion? Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon. You know, I think, contrary to your previous caller, the Hillary caller, I think Brexit was the European people, the British people decided we're sick of this quagmire called the European Union, and I think it's going to play directly to the favor of Donald Trump because our quagmire is career politicians who are dragging us down into the mud just like the EU is dragging down Great Britain. And I think there's going to be a great wake-up call for the American people to vote out all these cronies in Washington and get us a fresh slate.
You actually believe that?
I do believe that. I think people are going to see this as an awakening, that people are actually...
Well, the UK referendum is clearly an act of independence against an oppressive central government anywhere that it may exist. And, of course, Obama represents this overbearing central government more so than any modern president. He is a megalomaniac who was not happy with beating the American people up into a pulp, but he thought he could go over to Britain and beat them up because he was so charming. Well, they didn't buy his act, did they?
No, they did not, and I definitely think this is going to be a wake-up call for the American people to get out, vote, and get rid of all this quagmire of crony politicians in D.C. who've done nothing but drag us down. If Donald Trump could do 25% of what he said, he'll have done 100% more than these people have done in the last 20 years.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. You're 100% right on that. Let me send you a copy of my dog book, Teddy and Me. It's more entertaining than talking about Brexit right now. But I want to get the callers up there. I want the callers to call into the show on all the subjects that are related to this. And I want to go back to something that's very important to me, and I think it will be of some interest and entertainment value to you. And that is something, well, I'm not going to tell you where it's from. I'm not going to tell you where it's from because you'll liable to say, well, it's self-serving and it's boring. So I won't tell you where it's from, but I'm going to find it. It's going to take me a minute. And I have to search for it. And I think I found it. And it's about me writing in 2009 about TPP because I saw it coming then. I can't put my fingers on it. It's important that I reaffirm it. Oh, here it is. This was in 2000. Wait, I got to get the exact date. Those of you who follow the show closely, 2009. The book is called Banned in Britain. It's no longer available. Beating the Liberal Blacklist, Banned in Britain. It was a self-published book dedicated to all the men who died defending freedom of speech. And it was my cry for help in this battle against this oppressive, evil Labor government. And I was talking about not only my plight, but the plight of the world and what will happen if I lost the battle. And on the last page of the book, I wrote this. I said, write a letter to Congress about health care. Write about the next amnesty bill Obama wants to pass. Write and tell your senator and representative what you want them to do. What will happen if I lose this battle, I wrote? The government on both sides of the Atlantic will be emboldened. Perhaps a victory of the conservatives in Britain might change things. Well, it didn't. But in the United States, the Obama administration will only continue to push for intimidation and the end of all opposing voices. The criminal justice system, I wrote, will be used to harass conservatives in the name of protecting against terrorism. The fairness doctrine or some equally damaging regulation will be used to destroy talk radio. Government control of the economy will give bureaucrats the power to unofficially punish anyone they don't like. If health care reform passes, I wrote, the government will have new levels of knowledge about all your health issues and new ways to keep you in line. Don't let this happen. We need to push back now, not later. Take action. And that was in my book, Banned in Britain. And then, strangely enough, I turned the page and I found a long poem I wrote called The Weather Vane, which I think I'm going to read to you when I return right here on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. All right, that's a little too churchy for me. It doesn't mean anything. I'd rather hear Rule Britannia than that. I'm not into the medieval Christian music. Look, you're listening to the only member of the U.S. media ever blacklisted from a Western nation. You're listening to Michael Savage, who was banned from visiting Britain in May of 2009, and that made me the poster child for free speech. And it's not just for Americans concerned about a cultural shift towards totalitarianism and their rights to freedom of expression. But my case was a case for people around the globe. And by mid-2009, worldwide media attention concerning my ban resulted in huge media coverage in a New Yorker magazine profile written about me. Now, if it was only about me, it would be boring, but it wasn't only about me. It was about you. It was about all of us. And I was the canary in the coal mine. They picked on me, and they won. And then they picked on the British people, and they put them in chains. And now the British people have broken those chains. And it was the average person in Britain that broke those chains. I am still banned from entering Britain because there was a collusion between, I believe, everyone in the government here, meaning the top people, and the British government, which was ludicrous. I was no threat to them. So whether I'm lifted from the list doesn't really matter to me. It doesn't matter very much. The fact of the matter is that this is a huge story for the world to pay attention to. And Boris Johnson is now seen as the next prime minister. So who is Boris Johnson? Boris Johnson was nothing but a columnist for the London Telegraph in 2009. I don't know whether he was a liberal or not, but I think he is. In fact, he compared me with Howard Stern, thinking that all political talk radio is the same as those kind of statements that shock jocks put out. And as you well know, we are quite different from the Howard Sterns of the world. We actually stand for something. We actually inspire movements. We don't just entertain you with salacious stories about panty lines and brasiers and lesbians. But Boris Johnson couldn't make that distinction then. But he did understand that banning me, even though he didn't know who I was, made Britain look very infantile and pathetic. And it offended Johnson that the British people were treated as if they had to be protected from Michael Savage. And he said, what are we, some sort of kindergarten that needs to be protected against these dangerous American radio shows? Well, he was right about that. And I hope that when Boris Johnson becomes prime minister, he lives up to his words and he takes Michael Savage off the ban list. I'd like you to go to 36500 and text Savage. It's all about Britain. I have a lot at stake in this personally. I do want to go back to England before it's too late. I do. I love the architecture. I love the 18th century architecture in particular. My plant collections are in the Kew Gardens. They're also in Moscow, Honolulu, Berkeley. But I want to see that collection of plants because they're going to be there for hundreds of years, by the way. Isn't it odd that my own botanical collection is closed to me? They put me in the same category as terrorists. Anyway, look, it's very personal, and Britain's ban of Savage was decried by all of the freedom-loving people around the world, even those who detested my politics, by the way. The fair-minded Brits who didn't even like my politics saw how absurd it was to ban me for entering Britain based upon lies. So back in 2009, I was on the air in May. Let's see the date. I have the date somewhere. May 11th, 2009. And I put together something that I think is worth listening to. I don't know if it's going to be embarrassing or not. If it gets embarrassing, I'll have Robert cut it off. This is cold, right out of the archives. It's called The Weather Vane, V-E-I-N. And so in honor of the new Britain, which is, of course, a shadow of its former self, the Britain that I grew up loving and admiring for its Magna Carta and its stiff upper lip, which has become a quivering lower lip, I have written a new poem song for you called The Weather Vane. The Weather Vane, V-E-I-N, The Weather Vane. Guys, can you give me a little backdrop music? A little, No. I said no jazz. No, that's wrong. How about just giving me the rap beat in the back, and I'll try it with the rap beat. Okay, that's the one. The Weather Vane. I am Moses. I am Abraham and Isaac. I am Charlemagne. I am John Wayne. I am Coltrane. They try to suppress me, try to redress me, call me incorrect, deserving no respect. I am Patton. I am Hatton, even Mountbatten. I am Eisenhower, not a wallflower. I am Washington. I am Pershing. I am MacArthur. I am Kipling. I am Audie Murphy. I am Sky King. They'll steal your crown, trample you down, take your good name, put it to shame. I am Gene Autry, Roy Rogers, Tom Mix. They try to push me over the river Styx, but it won't mix with my true blood, which runs thick for America. I am the bane of those vain. I am the weather vane. That's good. This is Michael Savage. The phone number is 1-800. That's pretty good, The Weather Vane, 2009. That poem alone should put me into the Radio Hall of Fame. But, it doesn't work that way. People don't distinguish between, let's just say, who they like, political and politics, and who knows what's going on. You want to know quality? That was quality. No one in the history of talk radio has ever done what I've done, and no one ever will. And I'm going to tell you that because no one else will. That's all. When I leave radio, no one will ever replace me. It's impossible. I'm better than the greatest person you ever met in radio, ever. Why am I telling you this? Because I want to. And because there's a lot at stake for you in me. This challenge that I have in getting my name off that list in Britain is directly related to you. Because I'm simply a radio talk show host. And I was banned by the Prime Minister himself. His name was Gordon Brown. They conspired against my back in order to appease the Muslims. That's what we found. My lawyers spent a lot of time and money. And we found out that the Home Secretary, along with the Prime Minister, had conspired to ban Michael Savage A, I was a white man. B, I was a conservative. And it was to, quote, balance the list that they threw me out of England. And, of course, in the search of their emails, which we found, they themselves, when they were analyzing whether to ban me, wrote there is no evidence of Savage advocating or inciting violence. And yet, there was no one who stood up for me. And you say, well, why do I want to hear about that on the day of Brexit? Because to me, it's very personal. It's extremely personal. Pardon me. It's very personal, as it would be for you. How would you feel if you were a man without a country? How would you feel if you, as an American citizen, as were told you have freedom to travel, were told that you have a limited freedom to travel, you can't go to a certain country, and you were lied about, they misquoted you, and they put you in the category with virtual murderers? They put me in the same category as Muslims who had beaten in the head of an Israeli child in front of her parents after shooting the father. They made the mother watch as they beat in the head of a little child, these Palestinians who broke into a home in Israel. Now, of course they should be banned, but what am I doing on that list, I asked myself. Why am I on a list with Russian skinheads? I asked myself. This all ties into the refugee crisis, the immigration crisis brought about by Hillary Clinton's Arab Spring plan. This all is interconnected, and in many ways I am the center of it in my own mind. I don't mean that what just happened is about me. Don't get me wrong. But I see myself firmly involved in this entire struggle for national sovereignty and the return of law. So if you want to comment on any of these topics, the phone number here is open for you on Open Mic Friday, 855-400-7282. WMAL in Washington, Mark, line 1. What's on your mind? Please go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Savage. I just want to say that the Brits did one of the steps in your book, The Government Zero, a nationalistic movement to take the country back.
Well, I can't say that they read my book and that's what did it. I think it was the fisherman who knew himself that he was being ruled by a bunch of college boys in Brussels, and he wanted to be able to fish in his own waters without having to get a letter of permission from Brussels. That's what really did it. It was also the low level of refugees they were getting from Africa, the low level and violence that they were getting from Africa and from Syria. The people were living worse than the immigrants. The government was bending over backwards to give them housing. That is the immigrants' housing at the expense of the individuals who had lived in that country for centuries or longer, millennia for that matter. Descendants of those living in England for millennia were being usurped by Africans and by Syrians, and they could not understand why. And, of course, the answer was clear, because the New World Order wanted to make them strangers in their own nation. Does that sound a little bit like what you're feeling here in America?
Absolutely, but I do want to point out one other thing. You talked about Hillary Clinton's policies and bringing the refugees over here. It all started with Bill Clinton and the diversity lottery. Do you remember that? When
no, I don't.
He did not apply. It was like everybody but Western white Europeans. Yeah, I think we need to get to that. That's another Clinton failure.
All right. Well, you see this as directly related to the immigration policies of Barack Obama, and so do I. And I believe that we've gone from immigrants to gimmigrants in less than one generation, and I think the age of the gimmigrants are over. Mark, thanks for calling from WMAL, WVNN in Alabama, KSFO in San Francisco. We have callers from around the nation with two open lines at 855-400-7282. Jordan, WABC New York. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Dr. Savage. We have a lot to talk about, but I wanted to first ask you if you're familiar with human geography.
Well, what's the point?
Well, human geography is it's a body of knowledge about, or a body of science that studies how human movements and migrations cause changes. And I do want to agree with your point that it was this migration of people into the EU that was the tipping point. And it made me wonder if something like this couldn't be orchestrated by another country or by another terrorist organization and create another flow from a different country.
Look, all you have to know is that before this vote, the terrorists themselves said they were in favor of staying in the European Union because the European Union laws were more tolerant of them than British law itself. What more do you need to know?
So, in its human geography...
So thanks for the call. I'm repeating human geography over and over. Everyone's got something to sell today. Everyone's got an axe to grind and something to sell. Let's see the next caller here. WMAC in Georgia. Josh, welcome to the Savage Nation.
Hi, sir. A previous caller mentioned that this vote provides safety for Britain, prevent a war with Russia. I think it could potentially lead to the opposite. With Britain's economy now being pulled out of the EU, it now really has just Britain and France stabilizing it. Russia's an opportunistic predator, and we've seen them act at different points to try to influence the economy in Europe. I think that the temporary problem is going to be increased Russian activity in the east. And I think we're going to have to wait until the fall or winter to see it. I foresee the Russians putting a squeeze on the EU by putting a clamp on the gas, the natural gas that flows into Europe. We've seen them do it in the past when it gets cold, and that's the first thing that the EU is going to jump at. I think the Russians are going to flex their muscles without the British economy there to support the EU, and they're going to take advantage of a situation where the economy in that region is down.
You very well may be right. You very well may be right. And Putin has been hammered very, very strongly by the collapse in the price of oil. His economy is not doing very well. And he has very, very little to hold over Europe other than the natural gas and very cold weather. So there's no question that he would do that. As any other leader of a sovereign nation would use whatever power he has to support his nation, except our president, who will do anything he can to undermine the sovereignty of the nation. But having said that, yeah, I think you're right. I think Russia could become emboldened by this. I agree with you on that.
Because
and by the way, I mean, I can continue the paragraph by saying the counterpoint or the counterbalance to Russia's aggression, should it occur or become apparent, would be a Donald Trump presidency where Donald extends a hand of friendship and tries to work out a deal with Russia to stop any military action, as opposed to Hillary Clinton, who has already called Putin Hitler and would be too quick on the trigger, in my opinion. And that's the danger of a Hillary Clinton. She's erratic, she's irrational, and she's also corrupt. And I think that although what you said is true, I think Trump may be the answer. What do you think?
I think you're right, and the point that Putin has said at different times that he respects Trump's strength and he respects Trump as a businessman and a straight talker.
Yeah, strong men like strong men. They don't like corrupt women. Okay, Josh, thanks for calling. I'm sending you a copy of Government Zero for you to peruse when you receive it next week. This is the Savage Nation. It's Open Mic to Mike Friday. We'll do some rock and roll. We'll do all the other news of the day. There is no other news, by the way. There's no other news. I mean, this is a shock, a cataclysm, and everyone's talking about it. If you care to join this conversation about what's going on in Londonistan, now we read that the city of London wants out of the United Kingdom. London itself, under the Muslim Mayor Khan, wants to join the European Union. Can you believe this? You talk about a snake. You talk about an enemy within. You talk about someone stabbing his own nation in the back. There it is. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I trust to protect my wealth and financial future. Call 1-800-289-2646. I always looked up to Britain. I was an Anglophile from the earliest days. I affected a lot of the British lifestyle, let's say. I thought they were wonderful. And then along came these communists, these leftists, these laborites, these socialists who hated their own country. And I'm going to lay it like on a line like it is. Let's be very clear. You want to be very clear about it? It's about race. Let's be very clear about this. It was the white voters in Britain that spoke. And it was the last time they're going to be heard from in this manner. And the most brilliant minds in the left, whether they be at Hillary's Democratic Party headquarters in Brooklyn or in Brussels or in London or in Washington, they better be very clear they are in grave danger, and all their plans have just gone up in smoke. As someone wrote in the Telegraph today, with the referendum proving once again the utter contempt for mainstream politicians felt by the white working classes of virtually all Western countries The prospect of a President Trump has never seemed more likely. And she said the white working classes of virtually all Western countries. And make no mistake about it, the white working classes are still a majority in the United States of America. You may not know it watching the media. You may not know it watching the commercials. You may not know it watching the movies and the shows where whites are shown to be bumbling fools. From the advertising agencies to the film directors, they have tried to remake America in the image of Barack Hussein Obama and the New World Order. And today the people in England said, you know what, take it and shove it, because we're still here and we're going to be heard from. So it's the white working class of the United States that is feeling the reverberations of what happened in England. And the Democrats are, for a lot of time now, have been trying to say, well, America's not going to go for this maverick, this xenophobic, boorish billionaire over the wise, experienced Mrs. Clinton. And the British establishment said the same thing. The British establishment said that the electorate, the dummies, the whites in England who they thought were nothing but cows with ropes around their neck, they would not defy the collective authority of virtually all the country's senior politicians, economists, and international leaders. But the people did. And so Trump goes over there, and whether it's good timing or genius, he visits his Scottish golf course this very morning. And where was Clinton this very morning? She was in her home in upstate New York. She had previously warned against the vote to leave the EU. I think she got a shock that she's reverberating from. The fact of the matter is Brexit proves one thing if it proves anything. Working people around the world are in no mood to be overrun by immigrants who have no commonality with them. The working people are still the majority in Britain and in the United States. They are very angry. They're very restless, and they want a revolution. This is the Savage Nation. One more hour, one more number, 855-400-7282.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage. Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation. Talk radio for the thinking person, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, Michael Savage.
70 million people have said we must leave the European Union. We now need a Brexit government. June the 23rd needs to become a national bank holiday, and we will call it Independence Day. What we've got next week is the beginning of Turkish accession negotiations. But the most remarkable thing is not what's happened in British politics over the last couple of months, it's what's happened in European politics. Now we're seeing opinion polls in the Netherlands, in Denmark, even in Italy, where 50% of the population in those countries support leaving the European Union. The project is dead. This British referendum has changed the landscape forever.
And that's the reverberation that we are feeling in America. We know what this is all about. This is an attempt through massive refugee influx, the influx of massive numbers of refugees, to transform nations that are primarily white. Let me make it very clear. Let's stop dancing around the maypole here. You know what Obama's been doing. You know what all those in the media have been celebrating, haven't you? Well, what happened was the white working class in Britain stood up today and said, no, we're not going to be run over. We're not going to be turned into a province of Syria or of Africa. You're not going to turn us into serfs. We are going to leave you behind. And we're fighting the same battle here. You can make it race if you want, or you can see it in the bigger context of nationalism and pride in their own nation, which is how I see it. And if you want to comment, the phone number is open to you at 855-400-7282. Let's go to the first caller who's been hanging quite a while on KSFO Radio in San Francisco. Christian, line 3. Go ahead, please.
Michael, that poem you wrote in 2009, The Weather Vane, that is spot on. You are a genius. And Donald.
Yeah, but it takes a musician or an artist to even hear what I did. The average person wouldn't have even heard what I said. They would have listened to it in some semi-cynical, sarcastic manner and thought it was not good because they haven't seen it on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Are you yourself an artist of any kind?
I'm a writer.
No, thank you. Thank you. So the small number of people who write and have a creative spark understand what I was trying to say from the heart in that poem. But it has to do with today, doesn't it? Doesn't it represent all of us in its own way? We are all the weather vane. We are all the weather vane. Every one of us is a weather vane, and we hate this government. From the bottom of our heart, we hate Obama in particular. Now, I'm using a very strong word. I don't mean dislike. I hate what this man is doing to this country. I hate his arrogance. I hate his imperiousness. I hate his conniving. I hate his stepping on the Constitution. There's nothing to love about this man. And he had the nerve to go over to England and try to sway them, thinking that the way he connived the American people, he could go over there and connive them. But it failed. And many people are saying the loss of this stay with Europe thing is directly tied to Obama. He took a double whammy in the last 48 hours. It's 2 losses in a row. He lost his devious plan to grant amnesty to 4 million or more illegal aliens just in time for Hillary's election. He lost on that. Then he lost on this. I think that this man is finally becoming unraveled. That's my personal opinion. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. You see, the thing is, you're a truth seeker. You said that, and that's what you are. And that's why you're banned in England. It's not because of what you're a terrorist. It's because you're the opposite. You're a wrecking ball, Michael Savage, to the New World Order. Your voice, your truth, what you speak. You're the tip of the sword. That's why you're so important.
Now, Christian, I remember you are an African-American man. You say you're Harvard educated?
Yes, I am.
Christian, we talked the other day about the spiritual element of Barack Obama. And you, strangely enough, sent me an analysis of the Bible. And you almost predicted that something was going to happen in the very near future to derail Obama's agenda. I believe that you did predict this, didn't you?
Oh, absolutely. And and it takes one to know one.
Barbara, listen to me. Christian, please listen to me. I asked you 3 times on the air, how does this end? Remember we were talking about the Antichrist, and I kept saying to you, how does this end? And then you sent me a long email about it. And I was amazed because not a day later, it started to unravel for him.
Absolutely. Well, that's the spirit that we're both in. You're attuned to the spirit. You come up with terms like democrats. I mean, you're just amazing.
Democrat. I remember when I invented that in the 90s. Democrat's good. It's very funny. They are. Did you see the fools in the Democrat Party doing a, quote, sit-in on the floor of Congress like a bunch of spoiled brats? In Congress, a bunch of flabby, middle-aged phonies pretending that they're hippies at a sit-in. Did you see that one?
Yeah, I saw it. I mean, and Lewis is like, he's trying to go back this past, but we're way beyond that. And
yeah, but he's sitting in Congress. He's not in the gutter anymore with his arms locked with other people. He's in Congress. Why is he behaving like a disenfranchised individual when he isn't?
Spoiled brats.
All right, Christian, thanks for calling the program. That opens up one line at 855-400-7282. 855-400-SAVAGE. K. Eugene, Oregon. KUGN. Stan, go ahead, please. What's on your mind?
Hey, Dr. Savage. Here's what prompted my call. I'm an evangelical Christian. I was driving a long work day on the road, and I've never heard anyone on national radio bring this up, but you did, to your credit. I think you're spot on. Really what we're seeing, you brought up Isaiah 5:20. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who substitute darkness for light and light for darkness. And basically, my main point is what we're seeing politically with all these things, the globalism, the Obama, I mean, Clinton, if there was ever a Queen of Narnia, my gosh, But it's rooted in just a spiritual darkness. It really is my point, and it's unfortunate. But we're just seeing the surface of it. And when things are incomprehensible and don't make any sense with the immigration, with the, the globalism, it really roots down to a spiritual, core. So that's really the main thing I wanted to call in for.
Well, so you think that this indicates a victory over this evil?
Well, I think, the Brexit thing is great, but I don't know that it's just a singular event, I think the main, one very short verse to share is Ephesians 6:12. It says...
Well, no, I don't want to do the biblical stuff right now because I think it'll throw a lot of people for a loop. They're not, able to even understand it. But you say it's more spiritual than political, and I agree with you. There's some spirituality in this for sure. The phone number again is 855-407-282. It's open mic to Mike Friday, but there's nothing else to talk about except this, so let's keep talking about it on the Savage Nation. WABC, John, line 4. Go ahead, please. What's on your mind, John?
Oh, Dr. Savage, to your statement at the bottom of the last hour about this starting the revolution, I'd like to propose to you that the revolution already began, and we know that. We should know that by Barack Obama's criminal justice reform and swinging open prison doors.
Absolutely. Obama is a revolutionary. He has tried to destroy this nation remake it in his own image. He thinks he's God. And that is the definition of a megalomaniac. He actually thinks he's God, and he's trying to remake America into his own image. I agree with that 100%. I had a vision about that the other night, but I think that this stopped him in his tracks, in addition to getting stopped on immigration the other day. Does that mean he's finished? Not at all. He's very devious, he's very resilient, and he's got all the power behind him. He owns the media. He owns the bankers. He owns the social networks. Look where he's speaking today, with none other than a pimply-faced website owner named Mark Zuckerberg. What kind of president does a thing like this on a day like today instead of speaking to the people? Thank you for the call. This is the Savage Nation. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Hey, our Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I trust for wealth insurance, gold and silver. Call 800-BUICOIN. There's going to be a lot of bad things happening right now because the elites are not going to let it happen so quickly. Remember, they control the purse strings, they control the military, they control immigration. They can make all sorts of things happen all of a sudden. They could have black flag operations. They could let terrorists loose in the streets to set off bombs in London subways. I wouldn't put anything past them. You have no idea that when trillions are at stake, what these vermin are likely to do. For example, the Council on Foreign Relations has been a long-term player in the establishment of the New World Order, meaning centralized government that runs the entire globe. And there's a guy on that CFR called Richard Haas, who we're going to play in a minute, who says the people are too stupid to know what they just did. Here is an example of why the people just did what they just did. It's because of nuts like Richard Haas of the CFR in 23.
Yeah, it's easy to sound melodramatic, but the European project is 3/4 of a century old, and people take its peace and prosperity for granted. They focus on all the bad things, the inefficiency, the overregulation, the democratic deficit. But this is playing with history. And people are going to look back on this, and they're going to say this was a colossal mistake. People went to the polls without understanding the full consequences of what they were setting in motion. And a lot of history is going to be divided between before and after the Brexit vote. It goes far beyond whatever gyrations happen in the market this week.
So this schmuck at the Council of Foreign Relations, I think he inherited the Dungaree fortune. I'm not sure. I believe he comes from the Dungaree family. I'm not sure. Says the people were stupid. They went to the polls. They didn't understand the full consequence of what they were setting in motion. Only the Dungaree Dahlia knows what's really going on. Only the inheritance cases have never worked a day in their life. The fishermen don't know what's going on. The tradesman doesn't know what's going on. The nursery school owner doesn't know what's going on. The nurse doesn't know that there's diseases being brought in by illegal immigrants. They're too stupid. No, only those living on Pacific Heights around Dianne Feinstein, they know what's going on. No one else knows anything. Sniff, sniff. Only the frauds who go to that 10th grade opera house here in San Francisco know what's going on. Not the common people who have to face the garbage in the streets that they are brought into this country. Let me be very clear. The people are much smarter than these people. And they're much more powerful than these people. And unfortunately for these Richard Haases and Barack Obamas, the people still have a vote. And my friends, there's the rub. That's why Obama's been trying to rub out the vote by bringing in as many illegal aliens as he could as fast as he could. But he got stopped in his tracks not 2 days ago with a 4-4 split on the Supreme Court, as you well know, on the issue of amnesty for illegal aliens. He wanted to stock the polls with 4 to 10 million illegal aliens just in time to elect the latest iteration of Barack Obama, another stooge of the New World Order. Now, who actually runs the New World Order is a good question. We know that the Pope is part of this plan. We know that Obama's certainly part of this plan. We know Hillary's part of this plan. But who actually runs it? Is it the EU? Are it the people in Brussels? Are they that powerful that they're running the whole world? Or is it a man named George Soros who bets against and for markets, and no matter which way it goes, he makes another few $1 billion, as he did this morning? Did you know that although Soros was greatly in favor of Britain not leaving the EU, he allegedly made a huge new fortune for his family investment firm by betting against the stock market? God only knows what currencies he's going to collapse next. There are some very intelligent, almost psychically intelligent people in the world who are just too smart for their own good and for the good of humanity. He happens to be one of them. KLIF, line 7 from Dallas. Go ahead, please. Shannon, you're on the Savage Nation.
Well, first, it's infuriating listening to this fellow from the Foreign Relations Council. I mean, he's a buffoon, but he makes the point, he illustrates the point I want to make, and that is we haven't seen the last of the elites in the UK, and then that's as far as that goes. But, yes, the people have spoken, and they want out of the EU and out of that corruption. But there's a lot of vested interest, and there's going to be a lot of obstacles thrown up by the powers that be. It's a very corrupt system. I think it's more corrupt in the UK. Well,
look, the wild card that's about to appear for these types, they've been defeated twice this week. I believe there could be war with Russia. They're going to try and provoke Russia into a war. The globalists want greater disturbance right now than they got today in the stock markets. Because when it comes to a loss of their absolute power, they're not going to go quietly into the night. I believe that the globalist elites who are putting out a prescription for a bad economy will be war itself. The only hope is that Putin will not fall for the bait. He will sit and not take the bait, and he will not respond to their provocations. But they're going to provoke him as sure as I'm sitting here over the next few days. They're going to move against him in the Ukraine. They're going to move against him on his borders. They're going to do everything they can to provoke Putin right now and distract everyone away from their failings, their manipulations, their destructive behavior, and turn it on Putin. That's where they're going to go. They're going to make him the new bad boy of the entire world. I agree with you 100%. Thanks for the call. That opens up a line at 855-407-282. If you care to comment on this huge story, we're here for another big half an hour on the program, and I think that many of you are not sure what this means. You don't know which side you should be on. You somehow feel that, okay, the British voters stood up and said we don't want to be controlled from afar by the college students who are running the EU, the money changers who are running the EU, like Soros in the minds of many. And you think that's a good thing. And in the long run, it may be a very good thing. But in the short run, I think you need to understand there's a rocky, rocky road ahead. Because the very evil people who gave us this, the very evil fork-tongued liars like Tony Blair, who lied to the British people about diversity and about immigration, are now up there smiling with their little puppet faces on every channel, trying to be as polite-looking as they can, while they have the knives in their hands behind their little black suits. They've only begun to decide what to do next. And I don't think it's going to be pretty. Again, prediction, hope I'm wrong, black flag events in England and everywhere else. Be aware of what I just said to you. These are the most evil people on the planet. They're capable of anything to maintain power. And anything means everything. Trust me on that one. I've seen it before. And so all I can say is batten down the hatches and get ready for a rocky ride over the next few days and months. Because although the people have been awakened, those who control the world are far more powerful than you may think. And they own the media. This will not end well in the short run. It will end well in the long run.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Well, I don't
live in Great Britain, but I'll tell you what I think. What worries me very much is the breaking down of international cooperation. Europe in the 20th century, as we all know, the kind of blood that was shed there is unimaginable, and you never want to see that again. On the other hand, I think what this vote is about is an indication that the global economy is not working for everybody, you know?
You know? Yeah, you know? You know, your wife is under indictment for bank fraud, you know? Yeah, we know, Bernie. We know how the game is played, Bernie, which is why now you're on the ash heap of history. Because you're nothing but a two-bit con man. Everyone saw through you. All right. He's gone. We're here. You know what's going on. And all of the leaders are in a state of shock. So the question is, what happens next? What really happens next? No one knows what happens next. Stock market down, Trump up. But what happens on Monday? How do the markets respond Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? And by the way, are the markets the only thing we should be worrying about? Is it the stock market that we're so concerned about? Is that all we should be caring about? Not about the type of refugee that's flooding into Europe and what that portends for the near and far future? Should we not be concerned about the type of immigrant that Obama is flooding into America? Now, I got to talk about that a little. I could easily be misinterpreted on this issue, and I think long and hard about this immigration thing every night. I'm the son of an immigrant, and it does give me perspective because I always ask myself, aren't some of the things that you're hearing about the immigrants today the same things that were said about your people when they came to this country? I keep asking myself that. And I said, yes, somewhat. But what is the difference? Well, let me tell you some of the differences, if you don't mind. When my grandfather came here from Russia, if he had been diseased, he would have been denied entry. When my grandfather came here from Europe, if he had no way to support himself, he would have been denied entry. There was no welfare in those days. This thing in the White House invites pure, unadulterated leeches into the country that will never work in the nation. Do you understand the difference on that level alone? How do you bring in a 16-year-old or a 18-year-old with Zika into the nation and think that that's good for the country? What is she, the next Madame Curie in the making? And if it wasn't for racism, she'd already be running for the presidency of the Harvard Union. What is he kidding us for? He's bringing in the lowest possible level of immigrant to make certain that the population is nothing but a bunch of dumb, easily manipulated slaves. That's what he's doing. So they can have 100 or 200 years of absolute rule. You see, what just happened in Europe indicates exactly why they want the dumbest, most illiterate possible level of immigrant. Why do you think they wanted Africans who could hardly speak a word of English, Syrians who didn't speak a word of English, and put them right on the dole? Because they knew as they did, as you saw it happen in London itself, that they would vote to remain with Europe. Why wouldn't you want to remain with Europe if you're sitting there in your apartment, cursing the country that you're in, and living nice and happy in a nice warm apartment with 3 square meals a day and social workers kissing your every finger? How are you, Mr. Jones? How are you feeling today, Mr. Jones? Is anyone racist towards you, Mr. Jones? Have your feelings been hurt in any way by a Britisher today, Mr. Jones? Who hurt your feelings today, Mr. Jones? Of course you'd love to come to London. So the fact of the matter is, they want people with almost no knowledge of the language and almost no knowledge of the political structure in order to do to the people what they just couldn't do in England. Do you understand that? This is what was at stake. And this whole thing was won only by a very thin margin. Like 1 million votes is not a big deal. You understand that? And so it's not over, incidentally. These bankers, these manipulators of currencies have not yet begun to fight. Watch out for black flag events, for those of you who know what I'm talking about. What you may not know is that Brexit is not binding. I don't know if you know this. I have not mentioned it once. The Brexit vote is not binding. It is incumbent upon their parliament to pass the legislation required to make this exit from the European Union official. I have a terrible fear that these evildoers in Parliament will ignore the will of the people. Listen to what I just said. They could care less about the people. They pretend that they care about democracy and the vote, but they probably will ignore the vote. That's my guess. Now, the left and the right on this issue are very interesting. Which side do you think wanted to stay with the European Union and why? And which side wanted to leave the European Union and why? WJJF in Connecticut. Chet, online 2. Go ahead, please.
Michael, I remember about 5 to 6 years ago when you were on with NPR, and I forgot the host, and it was when you were banned. Do you remember that interview?
Honestly, I don't. I really don't. Well, what happened during the interview?
Well, what happened on the interview was they brought you on, and you were being very honest and very nice, and I have to tell you that. And what they did is they brought you on, and they had somebody else come on. It was a caller. They didn't tell you that that was going to happen. And he came on, and you said, I'm hanging up. I'm hanging up right now because they had set you up. Now, you had been banned from Britain. And right now, this is your moment, Michael, I have to tell you. Because what you have predicted years ago is happening right now. And I think that Michael Savage right now is the creator of this, I don't know if you want to call it the Trump revolution or the Savage revolution, but it's going on. And we're all there for you. And Michael, I have to tell you, you are the I don't know if you want to call it the salvation or of the right wing or anything like that, but it is true. You're right there, man. I mean, I hear you every day. I listen to you every day, and you know.
Well, the fact of the matter is, the government of England tried to intimidate me by banning me from entering their country. Now, what does that tell you about a government that can't stand freedom of speech? I never called for anyone's death. I never called for harming anyone. And yet they banned me while letting Muslims in who call for death and violence against their own people. That's very interesting, isn't it?
But Michael,
Home Secretary Jackie Smith put me on a list of murderers and terrorists banned from entering the UK. You know, I have been trying to avoid saying this all day long, but this is a very, very personal thing for me. This Brexit thing. It's very personal for me. And I think that if Boris Johnson becomes prime minister, there might be a chance that I will be invited to England. And if I am, I certainly will tell them what I think of them, especially of the socialists who did this to me, because I am not an extremist. I am one of the most successful radio presenters in the United States with millions of listeners. And prior to becoming a radio talk show host, I was a nutritionist and botanist, and I try to tell them that I'm of no threat to them. I was the published author of over 20 books on botany, on medical anthropology, on nutrition. I'm a scientist who helped rescue rainforests in the South Pacific. I cataloged hundreds of disappearing medicinal plants around the world, and Kew Gardens in London is home to one of my rare collections of such plants. And I am a passionate believer in free speech, and frankly, it was a great blow to me to be banned from entering England. It was a huge story then, and I have a feeling it's going to become a big story again once the dust settles and people look back upon these years of the Socialist Labour Party and what they've done to England. And make no mistake about it, Cameron, although he ran as a conservative, was never any such thing. He immediately moved behind the same policies as that of his predecessor. The phone number again is 855-400-7282. It's all about immigration. It's all about the average person standing up to the elites. It's all about the fisherman off the coast of England who said that he had to go to the European Union to get permission to fish off the coast of his own country. Do you understand what this is about? It's about tyranny versus freedom. It's about liberty versus slavery. It's about answering to a bunch of nameless college students in the European Union who are dictating the terms of everyone's life in Britain. Well, that's all changed, has it? Well, temporarily. But the evildoers in the Council on Foreign Relations, the evildoers in all of these governmental agencies, trust me, they're not stupid. They're going to do everything they can to nullify this vote, even if it means war and terrorism. Back in a minute.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
It's sponsored by SwissAmerica.com. It's the only company I trust for tangible assets, gold and silver. Call 800-BUI-COIN. A lot of people, including yours truly, Michael Savage. I'm a student of the history of the United Kingdom, very deeply so, involved in it in many different ways, especially being banned from entering Britain. And I found a speech from Winston Churchill in 1945 that's worth repeating in part right now, because what you don't know is that there were speech controls in England under the rules of the European Union. People were being arrested for speaking out against immigrants. Did you know that? Robert, did you know that? Did you know that people were being detained and arrested by the police in England if they said one word against an immigrant because of not English laws, but European laws? And so back in 1945, the great Winston Churchill said the following: no socialist government conducting the entire life and industry of the country could afford to allow free, sharp, or violently worded expression of public discontent. They would have to fall back on some form of a Gestapo, no doubt very humanely directed in the first instance, and this would nip opinion in the bud. It would stop criticism as it reared its head, and it would gather all the power to the Supreme Party and the party leaders, rising like stately pinnacles above their vast bureaucracies of civil servants, no longer servants and no longer civil. I wrote that in Government, not in Government Zero. That appears in a little-known book called Banned in Britain, Beating the Liberal Blacklist. But that speech, I wish we could get the sound for it on Monday, because the illiberal attitudes of the European Union are very much to the point here. And today, as you see, there was a little D-Day here. And the tyranny of the European Union was finally stopped in its tracks. Again, as Churchill said, tyranny may suppress, it cannot endure forever. Dictatorship may for a time have the power to dictate, but it will not in the end decide the course of the human journey. Oh, if that were only true in America. Obama is a tyrant, and he has suppressed, and he did think he would endure forever. And he has had the power to dictate for quite a while now. But in the end, he will not have perennial power to decide the course of the human journey. In fact, as I said at the outset of this historic day on the Savage Nation, I think that we have seen a stone wall, two stone walls that Obama banged into. In a short period of time, he has been stopped with his amnesty plan, and he's been stopped with his desire for the New World Order to coalesce all of its power once and forever. Yes, my friends, you're not going to see this anywhere else. You're going to hear it, though, on this show and everywhere there is truth still being spoken. And now we have to move to Hillary Clinton. She's a very lucky woman, because today the Associated Press released a report saying that she held dozens of meetings with political donors and other operatives during her time as Secretary of State, and these meetings were left off of her official schedule. 75 meetings by Hillary with longtime financial backers of her political efforts connected to the Clinton Foundation were not included on her official calendar, or the names were not disclosed. The Associated Press found 114 non-governmental officials who attended those meetings and meals with Hillary Clinton, according to the Associated Press. And here's the strange part. Although this revelation was released, I think, last night, the State Department today, Friday, refused to defend the apparent omissions by Hillary Clinton because they know someone's going down. And they know that if they in the State Department, the low-ranking State Department operatives, defend the apparent omissions, they're going to go to prison. And they're not willing to go to prison for her. And I think this is the beginning of the end of Hillary Clinton's campaign, because these documents were obtained not by a right-wing group. They were obtained not by the Trump campaign, but these damning documents of Hillary's omissions of these meetings with longtime backers omitted from a calendar, illegal. They were obtained by the Associated Press as part of a lawsuit by the Associated Press involving the Obama administration. This is a huge story, and it's as huge a story as Brexit here in the United States of America. The fact of the matter is, the Associated Press did this, and they're a friend of the Clintons. And they located the discrepancies with Clinton's schedule by comparing a 1,500-page official calendar with separate plans compiled by Clinton's aides each day. And so, my friends, they're saying it doesn't amount to violations of the law, and many of these omissions can be explained by changing circumstances, blah, blah, blah. But this is another example of excessive secrecy and criminality and the terrible, questionable mix of government business with personal outside interests. How would you want someone as oily as her in the White House is beyond me. And yet, here it happened, and you didn't hear anything about it today, because we're all, rightly concerned about the bigger issue, which is the issue of the Brexit story. Well, that about summarizes it for the day. If you like what you've heard and you think that I'm worthy of it, text to 36500 Savage. That's simple. You just text 36500 to Savage. Put the name in Savage, 36500 Savage, and you nominate me to the National Radio Hall of Fame. Why do you want to do it? Do I need the award on my wall? No. I need to go there and I need to say,